When Keanu Reeves encountered a homeless girl on the street, her plea for help seemed like any other. However, as he took a closer look, he noticed something unusual that compelled him to take immediate action. If you have yet to subscribe, do so now. You don't want to miss what Reeves does next. The city of Los Angeles buzzed with life as the sun was setting. The streets swarmed with cars honking, impatient pedestrians jaywalking, and performers strumming guitars for a handful of change. Near the corner of an unassuming downtown cafe, Keanu Reeves stepped outside, tugging his leather jacket closer to block a chilly breeze. Keanu had always cherished moments like these, quiet, reflective, and detached from the problems of fame. Today was no different. A small meeting with an old friend, 2 cups of black coffee, and a rare afternoon of anonymity. But as he turned toward his parked motorcycle, he noticed her. A small figure hovered near the cafe's entrance, blending into the crowd, yet unmistakably different. A girl, no older than 13 or 14, stood with her shoulders hunched, her tattered hoodie swallowing her slight frame. Her hair was matted in places, streaks of dirt smudging her pale face, but it was her eyes that held him in place, sharp and clear, like twin daggers piercing the noise around them. Keanu slowed his pace. Something about her was off. She moved toward him with deliberate steps, her hands trembling as they gripped the frayed ends of her sleeves. "Sir," she said, her voice soft yet steady, "could you spare anything? Just $1 or 2? For a moment, Keanu froze, observing her closely. It wasn't the request that rattled him. Plenty of people asked for change in a city like this. It was her demeanor. She wasn't pleading. Her voice lacked the frantic desperation of someone used to begging. It was too calm, too measured. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a $20 bill. As he handed it to her, his eyes caught a small detail peeking out from beneath her hoodie. A school pendant, tarnished but recognizable. A silver emblem, the kind that belonged to uniforms worn by students of exclusive prep schools. "You okay?" Keanu asked, tilting his head slightly. The girl hesitated, her sharp gaze flicking up to his. "Thank you," she muttered, snatching the bill. She turned abruptly to leave, her frame practically disappearing into the sea of pedestrians. But Keanu's gut screamed at him. Something wasn't right. That pendant, expensive, polished despite its wear, didn't belong to someone who'd been on the streets for long. "Wait," he called out before he could stop himself. She froze. "I'm not trying to pry, but—" Keanu's voice softened, cautious not to spook her. "Do you need real help? Food, maybe? A place to sit for a bit?" She turned halfway, eyeing him warily. "Why would you care?" Her question stung. It was honest in the way only someone who'd been let down too many times could be. Keanu took a slow breath and shrugged. "Because I can. That's all." She hesitated, clearly torn. For a long moment, the sounds of the city drowned out their silence. Finally, she nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Fine. I'm hungry." They walked 2 blocks to a small diner, one of those family-owned places that hadn't changed since the 90s, complete with cracked leather booths and flickering neon signs. Keanu chose a booth at the back, where they could speak without attracting attention. The waitress, a plump woman with a practiced smile, brought menus, eyeing the pair with faint curiosity before retreating. The girl immediately ordered a grilled cheese sandwich, fries, and a soda. Keanu, watching her hands shake slightly as she held the menu, ordered a coffee. For the first few minutes, she said nothing. She picked at the paper napkin in front of her, eyes darting nervously to the door. Keanu decided to keep the tone light. "I'm Keanu, by the way." "I know who you are," she replied, not looking up. Keanu chuckled softly. "Okay, that saves time. And you are?" Silence. Then, "Maya. That your real name?" She finally looked up, her gaze defiant. "Why does it matter?" Keanu raised his hands in surrender. "Fair enough, Maya." The waitress returned, placing her food down. Maya lunged for the sandwich like she hadn't eaten in days. Keanu didn't press her to talk. He just watched and waited, sipping his coffee. As Maya ate, Keanu studied her more closely. Underneath the dirt and grime, her face was delicate, her features striking. She wasn't just some street kid. Her posture, slightly hunched yet refined, hinted at someone who hadn't always lived like this. And there was that pendant again, peeking out as she leaned forward. Keanu's curiosity burned hotter now. "Nice necklace," he said casually. Maya froze mid-bite, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him pause. "It's just a pendant," she muttered, stuffing the rest of the sandwich into her mouth. "Looks like it's from a school," he continued, ignoring her attempt to shut the topic down. "One of those fancy ones, right?" She dropped her sandwich, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Maya," Keanu said gently, his tone shifting. "I'm not trying to scare you. I just want to help." Her face contorted with conflicting emotions, fear, anger, and something else. "You can't help me," she snapped, pushing her plate away. "No one can." Keanu leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Let me decide that." For a moment she stared at him, lips pressed into a thin line. Finally, she whispered, "You really don't want to get involved. Try me." Maya stood up suddenly, grabbing her hoodie. "Thanks for the food, but I need to go." Keanu didn't stop her. He watched her storm toward the door, her shoes leaving faint scuff marks on the worn linoleum. Something told him chasing her now would only push her further away. As she reached the exit, her pendant slipped from her hoodie pocket and fell to the ground with a faint clink. She either didn't notice or didn't care, vanishing into the night without a second glance. Keanu exhaled slowly, then stood up and walked over to the pendant. He crouched, picking it up gently. Up close, he could see the engraved crest, a silver shield with ivy curling around its edges. Recognition flashed through his mind. He'd seen this logo before. It belonged to Whitmore Academy, an elite prep school for the children of LA's wealthiest families. Keanu's jaw tightened. This wasn't just some homeless girl. Something was very, very wrong. Keanu pocketed the pendant and stepped outside, scanning the streets for any sign of Maya. She was long gone, but now he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Keanu stood under the glow of a flickering street lamp, the weight of the pendant heavy in his palm. He scanned the darkening streets, but Maya was gone, swallowed by the restless city. He turned the pendant over between his fingers, studying its fine engraving. Whitmore Academy. The crest gleamed faintly in the streetlight, a stark contrast to the girl's disheveled appearance. Keanu's instincts buzzed. There was a story here, one bigger than a runaway kid begging for change. After a few moments, he tucked the pendant into his jacket pocket and swung a leg over his motorcycle. He knew he couldn't let this go. Not yet. The next morning, Keanu revisited the diner and retraced his steps from the day before. He spoke to the waitress, who vaguely remembered Maya but shrugged when he asked if she'd come back. "We see kids like that sometimes," she said with a resigned sigh. "They come and go." Not satisfied, Keanu ventured further, back alleys, shelters, places where the city's unseen lived. Conversations were terse, guarded. A few homeless folks mentioned seeing a girl matching Maya's description, but no one knew where she stayed. "She don't trust no one," a grizzled man near a bus stop told him, scratching his unshaven chin. "Smart kid. Keeps her head down." Keanu felt his frustration growing, but he also understood. For someone like Maya, young, vulnerable, and on the run, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. That evening, Keanu sat in a corner booth at the diner, nursing another coffee. He'd been waiting for hours, unsure if Maya would show up. He'd left a message with a local shelter worker to pass along. "Tell her the guy from yesterday just wants to help." The bell above the door jingled. Keanu looked up just as Maya stepped in. She scanned the room warily, spotting him immediately. Her shoulders stiffened as if preparing for a fight, but after a long pause, she walked over. "Why are you looking for me?" she demanded, sliding into the booth opposite him. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "You left this behind." He set the pendant gently on the table. "Figured it might mean something to you." Maya's eyes widened for the briefest moment before she schooled her expression into indifference. "It's just a stupid necklace." "Doesn't look stupid to me," Keanu replied calmly. "Looks expensive. Looks like it's from Whitmore Academy." Maya froze. The silence stretched between them, thick as fog. Finally, she whispered, "How do you know that?" I've been around long enough to know a few things, Keanu said, leaning back in his seat. You want to tell me why a girl with a pendant like this is out here begging for change? Her eyes darted to the door. I told you, you don't want to get involved. Maybe not, Keanu admitted. But here I am. Maya stared at him, torn between suspicion and something that looked like hope. Finally, she slumped in her seat, her defiance cracking ever so slightly. I can't go back, she murmured. Keanu leaned forward. Why not? Maya looked away, chewing her lower lip as if debating how much to say. Because bad things happen when I'm there. Keanu's brow furrowed. At Whitmore? She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. At home. The words hit Keanu like a punch to the gut. He knew that tone. He'd heard it before in people who'd been hurt, betrayed, or abandoned. He let her sit in silence for a moment, giving her space. Look, Maya, he said gently. I'm not a cop. I'm not someone who's going to drag you back where you don't want to be. But if you're in danger— I am in danger, she snapped suddenly, her voice louder than intended. A few heads turned their way, and Maya shrank into the booth. I just don't know who to trust. Keanu nodded slowly. How about you trust me? Just a little. Maya stared at him, skeptical, but clearly desperate. After a long pause, she muttered, Fine, but you can't tell anyone, okay? I promise. She glanced down at the pendant in Keanu's hand. My dad gave that to me, she said quietly. He wanted me to wear it to school, said it showed how much he loved me. Keanu frowned. And where's your dad now? Maya's jaw tightened. Gone. He left us. My mom said he wasn't coming back, and then everything went to hell. What do you mean? She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. After my dad left, my mom changed. She started seeing this guy. Some rich creep who acts all nice in public, but he's not. He's dangerous. Keanu's stomach twisted. Dangerous how? Maya's eyes darted to the window as if expecting someone to be watching. He hurt me. He hurt my mom too, but she won't admit it. She just pretends everything's fine. And when I told her what he did to me, she didn't believe me. Keanu's expression darkened. So you ran. Maya nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I thought if I could disappear, maybe he'd leave her alone. Or maybe someone would notice I was gone and ask questions. But no one cares. Her voice cracked on the last words, and Keanu's heart clenched. He'd seen plenty of pain in his life, on film sets, in war zones during charity work, and even in his own past. But this felt raw and immediate, a girl with no one to fight for her. Keanu looked at her, his voice steady. You said no one cares, but that's not true. I care. And if what you're saying is real, if this guy is hurting people, then we can do something about it. Maya's head snapped up. No, you can't go after him. He's too powerful. If he finds me, he'll kill me. I know he will. Keanu didn't flinch. Then we'll make sure he doesn't find you. She stared at him, her expression flickering between hope and disbelief. Why would you even help me? You don't know me. Maybe because I've been where you are, Keanu replied quietly. Alone. Lost. Thinking no one's coming to help. Maya's lips trembled, and for the first time her defenses seemed to crumble. She wiped her face quickly, trying to hide the tears. I don't know what to do. You don't have to figure it out alone, Keanu said firmly. But first you need somewhere safe to stay. Maya hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay. As they left the diner together, Maya kept close to Keanu, her small frame dwarfed by his presence. He walked her to his motorcycle, offering her his helmet. We'll figure this out, he assured her. Maya looked up at him, her eyes cautious but grateful. You promise? I promise. But as Keanu secured the helmet strap under her chin, he felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, his sharp gaze scanning the shadows across the street. A black car sat parked at the curb, its engine running. The silhouette of a man in the driver's seat was barely visible, but Keanu's instincts screamed that this wasn't random. Come on, he said softly, nudging Maya toward the bike. We need to move. What is it? She asked, her voice small. Nothing, Keanu lied, starting the engine. Hold on tight. As they sped off into the night, the black car pulled out from the curb and began following them. The roar of Keanu's motorcycle echoed through the streets as he weaved skillfully between cars, pushing the engine harder. Maya clung to him tightly, her fingers digging into his jacket. Behind them, the black car maintained a steady pursuit, its headlights glowing like predatory eyes in the dark. Are they following us? Maya shouted over the wind. Keanu glanced in the mirror, his jaw tightening. Yeah, but we'll lose them. The car accelerated, inching closer, and Keanu swerved into a narrow alley, narrowly missing a dumpster. The motorcycle skidded slightly before regaining traction. The black car attempted to follow, but came to a screeching halt when it became obvious the vehicle couldn't fit. Keanu didn't slow down. He guided the bike through the labyrinth of alleys until they emerged blocks away. Only then did he ease off the throttle, coasting to a stop near a small, abandoned warehouse. The area was quiet, shrouded in darkness. Come on, Keanu said, helping Maya off the bike. He scanned the empty streets, his senses sharp. We'll hide out here for a while. Maya followed him inside the warehouse, her breath ragged from fear and adrenaline. Who were they? I don't know yet, Keanu admitted, but we'll figure it out. Keanu pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He knew this situation was bigger than he could handle alone. After a moment, he found the name he was looking for, Frank Miller, a retired detective Keanu had worked with on a past project, now a trusted friend. The phone rang twice before Frank picked up. Reeves? It's late. What's going on? I need a favor, Frank, Keanu said, his voice low. I've got a kid here. Her name's Maya. She's in trouble, and I think there's someone dangerous after her. Frank's tone immediately sharpened. What kind of trouble? Her story's still unfolding, but it's bad, Keanu replied. I need you to look into a name for me, Whitmore Academy. Something doesn't add up, and I think this girl's situation goes deep. Whitmore, huh? Frank muttered. That's a big name. Give me a few hours and I'll see what I can dig up. Thanks, Frank, I owe you. Stay safe, Keanu, and watch your back. Keanu ended the call and turned to Maya, who sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, hugging her knees. I've got someone looking into things. We'll get some answers soon. What if they find us? Maya asked quietly. They won't, Keanu reassured her. Not tonight. By dawn, Frank called back with preliminary findings. Keanu stepped away from Maya to answer. You were right to be suspicious, Frank began. Whitmore Academy is elite. Tuition costs more than most people's mortgages. But here's where it gets interesting. Maya's family name is on the school's donor list. Her father, Edward Mason, was a major donor up until about 2 years ago. Keanu frowned. Her dad left 2 years ago, that's what she told me. Exactly, Frank said. Edward Mason disappeared under strange circumstances. No body, no goodbyes, just gone. And here's the kicker. Shortly after, Maya's mother remarried a guy named Victor Langston. He's got money, but he's got a record too. Real estate mogul with some shady business dealings. Victor Langston, Keanu repeated, his tone darkening. He's the one Maya ran from. Wouldn't surprise me, Frank replied. The guy's clean on paper, but word is he's dangerous behind closed doors. Ties to blackmail, intimidation, and maybe worse. Keanu ran a hand through his hair, processing the information. You think he's looking for Maya? Guaranteed, Frank said. Kids don't just disappear from families like that without people noticing. If Langston has something to hide, he's not going to let her tell anyone about it. Keanu's stomach turned. Thanks, Frank. Keep digging. Be careful, Reeves. This guy plays dirty. Keanu returned to Maya, who was still huddled in the corner of the warehouse, her eyes red from lack of sleep. You okay? She nodded faintly. What did your friend say? Keanu crouched in front of her, his voice soft but serious. He told me about Victor Langston. At the mention of the name, Maya's body stiffened. I told you, he's dangerous. I believe you, Keanu said gently, but I need to understand everything. What did he do to you? Maya hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Her voice came out small, fragile. At first, he was nice. He bought my mom gifts, took us on trips, made everything seem perfect. But after my dad left, he changed. How? Maya swallowed hard, her hands shaking. He started watching me, following me around the house. And then one night he came into my room. He didn't... She broke off, choking on the words. He didn't get to hurt me that night, but he said if I told anyone, he'd make my mom pay for it. Keanu's fists clenched at his sides. And your mom? She didn't believe me, Maya whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. She said I was making it up because I missed my dad. But I know what I saw, what he tried to do. Keanu sat back, his jaw tight with anger. He'd heard enough to know Maya was telling the truth. Victor Langston wasn't just dangerous, he was a predator. You did the right thing by running, Keanu said finally, his voice low but steady. But we're not going to let him get away with this. Maya wiped her face, looking up at him with cautious hope. What are you going to do? First, Keanu said, I'm going to make sure you're safe. Then we're going to take this guy down. Keanu made another call, this time to a woman named Sarah Brooks, a journalist he trusted, known for exposing corruption among the city's elite. Sarah, it's Keanu, he began. Keanu Reeves calling me first thing in the morning? Must be serious, Sarah teased, but her tone shifted when she heard the edge in his voice. What's going on? I need your help, Keanu said. I've got a story that needs to come out, and it's dangerous. A man named Victor Langston. He's a predator, and I have someone who can testify. Langston? Sarah's tone sharpened. I've heard whispers about him for years. Nothing sticks. This time it will, Keanu said. I need you to help me protect the girl who can expose him. Bring her to me, Sarah said. We'll figure out the rest. Keanu hung up and turned to Maya. We're going to meet someone, a journalist. She can help us tell your story. Maya looked scared. And then what? Then we make sure Victor Langston never hurts anyone again. As they prepared to leave the warehouse, Keanu heard it, the low rumble of an engine nearby. He peered through a crack in the boarded-up window and froze. The black car from the night before was parked outside. Two men stepped out, their silhouettes imposing against the early morning light. One of them spoke into a phone, nodding toward the warehouse. They found us, Keanu muttered. Maya's face paled. What do we do? Keanu grabbed her hand and led her toward the back of the building. We get out of here. As they slipped out the back door, the sound of footsteps echoed inside the warehouse. Keanu and Maya ran down the alley, hearts pounding. Behind them, the men shouted orders, their voices growing louder. Keep running, Keanu urged, pulling Maya along. They sprinted around the corner, only to find themselves face to face with another black car blocking their path. Keanu froze, gripping Maya's arm protectively as the second black car loomed in their path. The two men from the warehouse rounded the corner behind them, effectively trapping them in the alley. Get behind me, Keanu murmured to Maya, his voice calm but firm. The men advanced, one of them smirking as he spoke. You really shouldn't have gotten involved, Mr. Reeves. Keanu's eyes narrowed. You know who I am, huh? Good. That'll make what comes next even dumber for you. The first man lunged forward, but Keanu reacted with lightning speed. He sidestepped the attack, using the momentum to throw the man into the alley wall. The second man charged, but Keanu delivered a sharp elbow strike to his ribs, followed by a swift kick to his knee. The thug crumpled to the ground, groaning in pain. Let's go! Keanu grabbed Maya's hand, pulling her past the black car. Get them! One of the men shouted, but Keanu and Maya were already sprinting down the narrow alleyway, adrenaline fueling their escape. After several minutes of running through winding streets and ducking into side paths, Keanu led Maya into a crowded subway station. They blended into the throng of commuters, breathless but safe for the moment. We lost them, Keanu said, guiding Maya onto a train. We'll be okay for now. Maya slumped into a seat, wiping sweat from her forehead. How did you do that back there? Keanu gave her a small smile. I've done a few action movies in my time. Some of the training sticks. Maya let out a weak laugh, though her eyes were still filled with fear. You're like a real-life superhero, Not quite, Keanu replied, his tone soft. But I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I promise. As the train rattled forward, Keanu pulled out his phone and texted Sarah Brooks. Change of plans. We're bringing the girl to you now. Keanu and Maya arrived at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of the city where Sarah Brooks waited at a corner table. Sarah was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed and confident, with a reputation for digging up the truth no matter how deeply it was buried. Keanu, she greeted as they approached. Her gaze flickered to Maya, and her expression softened. This must be her. Maya, meet Sarah. She's a journalist, someone we can trust, Keanu said reassuringly. Sarah extended a hand to Maya. It's nice to meet you. I promise, I'm here to help. Maya hesitated before shaking Sarah's hand. How do I know you won't sell me out to Victor? Sarah smiled gently. Because people like Victor Langston think they can buy silence. My job is to prove them wrong. Keanu guided Maya into a seat. Sarah, what do we need to do to make sure her story gets out safely? Sarah leaned forward, her voice serious. First, we need the full truth, every detail. Then we need to find evidence to back it up. Maya, that pendant you have, can you tell me more about it? Maya fidgeted nervously, but Keanu gave her an encouraging nod. It was my dad's, she said softly. He gave it to me before he disappeared. I think it's important. Maybe he knew something. Sarah's brow furrowed. We'll need to look into your father's disappearance too. If he was a major donor to Whitmore Academy, there might be financial records or clues that connect Victor to something bigger. Over the next few hours, Sarah worked tirelessly, using her contacts and investigative tools to piece together a clearer picture of Victor Langston. Keanu stayed by Maya's side, offering quiet reassurances as Sarah's findings slowly came to light. Victor Langston is dirtier than I thought, Sarah said, scrolling through files on her laptop. He's been laundering money through shell companies and using his connections to silence anyone who gets in his way. Keanu's expression darkened. And Maya? Sarah looked up at him. She's the key to everything. If Victor targeted her and her family, it means they were a threat to him. Maya's father's disappearance may have been orchestrated to shut him up. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Do you think my dad's still alive? Sarah hesitated, glancing at Keanu. I don't know yet, but we'll find out, I promise. Keanu turned to Maya. You're brave, you know that? We'll get answers about your dad, and we'll stop Victor from hurting anyone else. As they packed up their things, preparing to relocate again, Keanu's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He frowned, stepping away to answer. Reeves, a cold, familiar voice drawled. You've been very busy today. Keanu's blood ran cold. Victor Langston. Smart man, Victor replied. Let's cut to the chase. You have something of mine. A girl who belongs to me. She's not yours, Keanu snapped. She's a kid, and you're a monster. Victor's voice remained calm, almost amused. Careful, Mr. Reeves. You don't know what you're up against. Hand the girl over and this all goes away. Keep playing hero, and people get hurt. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you? Keanu's grip on the phone tightened. You come anywhere near her, and you'll regret it. Victor chuckled darkly. We'll see about that. The call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Keanu returned to Sarah and Maya, his face grim. They know we're onto them. Sarah paled. We need to move fast. If Victor feels cornered, he'll be dangerous. Maya's voice trembled. What if he finds us? Keanu crouched beside her, his tone steady and resolute. He won't. We're going to expose him before he has the chance. That night, Sarah, Keanu, and Maya sat huddled around a table in Sarah's safe house, a small, nondescript apartment she used when working on sensitive stories. Here's the plan, Sarah began. We release the story to the public, but we need to have hard evidence first. I'll reach out to my contacts at Whitmore Academy and look for financial discrepancies or proof of Victor's involvement in Maya's father's disappearance. And me? Keanu asked. You'll stay with Maya and keep her safe, Sarah said firmly. Victor's people will be watching us, and I don't trust anyone else to protect her. Keanu nodded. What about Maya's mom? Does she know what's happening? Maya spoke up, her voice quiet but determined. She won't believe me. Not unless we have proof. Then that's what we'll get, Sarah said. Victor Langston's days of hiding are over. As the group finalized their plan, a loud knock echoed through the apartment door. Everyone froze. Sarah grabbed her phone, glancing at the security camera feed. Her face went pale. It's them! Keanu stood quickly, motioning for Maya to hide. Stay out of sight. The door rattled violently as someone kicked it from the other side. We know you're in there, a voice shouted. Keanu moved toward the door, grabbing a heavy chair to brace it. Sarah, back door, go! Maya clung to Sarah as they moved toward the rear exit. The sound of splintering wood filled the apartment as the door began to buckle. Keanu turned back to Maya. Run, I'll catch up. The door crashed open, and men in dark suits burst into the room, their eyes locking onto Keanu. As he braced for the fight, he shouted one last time to Sarah and Maya. Go! The last thing Maya saw as Sarah pulled her out the back door was Keanu, standing his ground, ready to face whatever came through that door. The moment the door splintered open, 3 men stormed inside. Keanu positioned himself between the intruders and the path Maya and Sarah had taken. His heart pounded, but his focus sharpened. Mr. Reeves, one of the men sneered, you're in way over your head. Keanu didn't respond. Instead, he moved first. He grabbed the nearest intruder, using his weight to throw the man into another. The third thug lunged at him with a crowbar, but Keanu ducked, delivering a sharp uppercut that sent the man staggering backward. The fight was brutal, but quick. Keanu dodged swings and countered with calculated strikes, his action training once again proving invaluable. The first man rose, only for Keanu to send him sprawling with a swift kick. The others groaned, either unconscious or defeated. Keanu didn't wait to see if they'd get back up. Wiping blood from his lip, he grabbed his phone and sprinted out through the back of the apartment building, determined to catch up with Sarah and Maya. Meanwhile, Sarah and Maya rushed through narrow alleyways, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Sarah kept a tight grip on Maya's hand, pulling her forward as adrenaline fueled their escape. Where are we going? Maya asked breathlessly. A safe house, I know, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the situation. We'll regroup there. They emerged onto a quiet street just as Keanu caught up to them, panting slightly. Are you okay? He asked, scanning both of them. Sarah nodded. We're fine. What about you? Keanu cracked a small smile. They'll be feeling it tomorrow. Maya stared at him in awe. You fought them off? All of them? Let's just say they're not winning any fights tonight, Keanu said, his tone lighter than his expression. But we need to keep moving. Victor's men aren't going to stop. They hurried toward Sarah's second safe house, an unassuming basement apartment tucked beneath a laundromat. Sarah led them inside, locking the door behind them and checking the windows. We're clear for now, she said, but we can't stay long. As they settled in, Sarah pulled her laptop out, while Keanu sat with Maya to check on her. How are you holding up? He asked gently. Maya toyed with the pendant around her neck. I don't understand any of this. Why would Victor want me so badly? Keanu's gaze softened. Sometimes bad people go to great lengths to protect their secrets. But we're going to find out what those secrets are. Maya looked down at the pendant, her fingers tracing its shape. My dad said this was important before he disappeared, but it's just a necklace. Keanu leaned closer. Can I see it for a second? Hesitantly, Maya removed the pendant and handed it to him. Keanu studied the small silver object, noticing its weight. This isn't just a regular pendant. Sarah glanced up from her laptop. What do you mean? Keanu pressed along the edges of the pendant until he felt something click. The pendant split open, revealing a tiny compartment inside. Maya gasped. There's something in there, Keanu said, pulling out a thin micro SD card. He held it up for Sarah to see. Your dad didn't just disappear. He left something behind. Sarah immediately grabbed her laptop. Give me that. Let's see what's on it. Sarah inserted the micro SD card into her laptop, typing furiously as encrypted files appeared on the screen. This is big, she muttered. The files are protected, but I can get through this. Minutes ticked by as Sarah worked to decrypt the files. Keanu sat beside Maya, who stared anxiously at the laptop screen. "What if this tells us what happened to my dad?" she whispered. Keanu gave her a reassuring nod. "Then we'll have the truth, and the truth is powerful." Finally, Sarah let out a triumphant sigh. "I'm in." The screen revealed folders filled with documents, emails, and bank records. Sarah's expression turned grim as she clicked through them. These files are explosive. They show Victor Langston has been embezzling money, covering up illegal business deals, and silencing anyone who got in his way. And look at this. Your father, Edward Mason, discovered the fraud 2 years ago. That's why he disappeared. Maya's eyes widened, tears welling up. "So, Victor did something to my dad?" Sarah nodded grimly. "It looks like your father was trying to gather evidence to expose Victor, but he vanished before he could go public." Keanu's voice was low, steady. "He left the evidence with you, Maya. That's why Victor's been hunting you. He wants to erase this." Maya's hands trembled as she clutched the pendant. "He killed my dad, didn't he?" Sarah hesitated. "We can't say for sure yet, but the evidence paints a clear picture. Your father's disappearance wasn't an accident." Keanu stood and began to pace, his mind racing. "We need to get this evidence out to the public immediately." Sarah nodded. "Agreed. I'll prepare a report and send it to my contacts in the media. This story is going to blow up, and Victor Langston's empire will crumble." "But what about me?" Maya asked softly. "Victor won't stop until he finds me." Keanu turned to her, determination etched on his face. "I won't let that happen. You'll stay safe with me until this is over." Sarah looked at both of them. Once this story breaks, Victor will be desperate. He'll try to run, or fight back. "Then we'll be ready," Keanu said firmly. "Victor's done enough damage. It ends here." As Sarah worked on preparing the files for release, Keanu kept watch by the window. He had a sinking feeling Victor wouldn't just sit back and let them expose him. His fears were confirmed when he noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding its occupants. Keanu's jaw clenched. "We've been found." Sarah looked up sharply. "How? This safe house isn't on any record." "They're probably tracking us," Keanu said, moving to pack up their things. "We need to leave, now." Before they could react, the SUV's doors opened, and several men in dark suits emerged. Moments later, the sound of footsteps echoed above them. Victor's men were already inside the laundromat. Sarah's eyes widened. "They're coming in!" Keanu turned to Maya, his voice urgent. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say." The door to the basement rattled, then splintered as the men forced their way in. Keanu moved quickly, grabbing a fire extinguisher and spraying it toward the doorway, creating a cloud of white mist. "Go! Back exit!" Sarah grabbed her laptop while Keanu shielded Maya, leading them through a narrow hallway toward the rear door. The footsteps of their pursuers echoed behind them, growing closer. Just as they reached the exit, a gunshot rang out, shattering the wall beside Keanu. He pushed Maya forward. "Run!" They burst out into the alley, the morning light blinding them momentarily. Keanu spotted a small van parked nearby, its engine running. Without hesitation, he pulled Maya and Sarah inside, slamming the door behind them. The driver turned to face them, revealing himself to be Frank Miller, the retired detective Keanu had called earlier. "Need a lift?" Frank said with a smirk. "Perfect timing," Keanu replied breathlessly as the van sped away, leaving Victor's men behind. Inside the van, Sarah held her laptop tightly, her face pale. "The files are ready, but we're running out of time. If we don't release this story in the next few hours, Victor will catch up to us." Keanu looked at Maya, who sat silently, clutching her pendant. "We'll make it. We have to." Frank glanced in the rearview mirror. "You guys better hold on tight. I've got a feeling this is only going to get messier." As the van raced towards safety, Victor Langston sat in his luxurious office, watching live security footage from the failed attack. His expression was cold and calculating. "Find them," he ordered his men. "And this time, don't fail. I want that girl, and every piece of evidence, destroyed." Inside Frank's speeding van, tension thickened. The city blurred past the windows, but the urgency in the air felt suffocating. Sarah worked feverishly on her laptop, reviewing the files one last time. "This evidence has to go live now," Sarah muttered. "Victor's men will stop at nothing to shut this down." Keanu, seated next to Maya, kept glancing behind them, watching for any sign of pursuit. "How long until you can release it?" "Minutes," Sarah replied. "I'm connecting to secure networks, but Victor has reach. If he intercepts this before it goes public, we're toast." Maya gripped the pendant tightly in her hands. "What if we don't make it?" she whispered. Keanu turned to her, his expression softening despite the chaos. "We're going to make it. I won't let anything happen to you." Maya's gaze met his, and for the first time some of the fear in her eyes seemed to ebb. Meanwhile, Victor Langston sat in his office, surrounded by monitors showing security footage and citywide tracking systems. His phone buzzed, and he answered sharply. "Have you found them?" "They escaped, sir," a voice on the line replied nervously. "But we're tracking them. Sarah Brooks's laptop just pinged. She's trying to upload the files." Victor's jaw tightened, his voice venomous. "Intercept the signal, shut it down now, and send every man we have after them. I want them brought to me." "Yes, sir." Victor ended the call, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the arm of his chair. He turned to one of his closest aides. "Prepare the jet. If they get away, we'll take this fight global." Back in the van, Frank suddenly swerved hard, narrowly avoiding a black SUV that barreled into their path. "Hold on!" Frank shouted as the tires screeched. The van careened into a side street, throwing everyone sideways. Sarah clutched her laptop, her knuckles white. "They're on to us!" Keanu peered out the window to see two more SUVs joining the chase. "They're not giving up!" "Take the alleys!" Sarah called Frank. Frank grunted, gripping the wheel. "I'll do you one better." The van shot down a narrow back street, barely squeezing between walls. Frank cut the headlights and turned abruptly into an underground parking garage. "Everyone out," Frank ordered, throwing the van into park. "We're switching rides." Sarah, Keanu, and Maya scrambled out as Frank led them to a beat-up sedan hidden behind a dumpster. "Get in," Frank barked. As soon as the group piled into the car, Frank gunned the engine. The sound of tires screeching above echoed through the garage. Victor's men were close, but they'd bought themselves a few minutes. As the sedan sped away, Sarah finally exhaled. "We're clear. For now." "How much longer?" Keanu asked, glancing at her laptop. Sarah worked furiously. "The files are uploading. Once they hit the cloud and I send the link to the media, Victor's empire is done." Maya stared out the window, her voice quiet. "Will this really stop him?" Sarah turned to her, her tone earnest. "It'll cripple him. The world will know the truth about what he's done. Once the evidence is public, Victor won't be able to hide." Keanu chimed in. "And you'll be safe. No one will have a reason to chase you anymore." Maya looked down at the pendant in her hands. "My dad risked everything to get this out. I just wish—" Her voice cracked. "I wish he were here." Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're honoring him, Maya. He gave you the strength to finish what he started." Sarah suddenly let out a triumphant cry. "It's done! The files are live! I sent them to every major news outlet and my trusted contacts. Victor Langston's secrets are out." A sense of relief washed over the group, but it was short-lived. Frank glanced in the rearview mirror, his face grim. "We've got company." Two black SUVs appeared in the distance behind them, closing fast. Frank pushed the gas pedal to the floor, but the vehicles were gaining. "They must have tracked us," Keanu muttered. He turned to Sarah. "How far is your next safe location?" "Too far," Sarah replied. "They'll catch us before we get there." Maya's voice trembled. "What do we do?" Keanu looked at Frank. "Head for the bridge." Frank frowned but nodded. "You've got a plan?" "Something like that," Keanu said, unbuckling his seatbelt. As they neared the bridge, a long, narrow structure spanning the river, Keanu turned to Sarah. "When I say go, you and Maya get out and head for the water. Frank, keep driving. I'll buy us time." "No way," Sarah protested. "You can't face them alone." Keanu's voice was steady. "I'm not asking. I need you to keep Maya safe. This ends now." Maya grabbed his arm, tears in her eyes. "Please don't." Keanu gave her a small smile. "Trust me, kid. I've got this." As Frank slammed the brakes halfway across the bridge, the black SUVs screeched to a stop behind them. Keanu stepped out, his hands raised as Victor's men emerged from the vehicles. The lead thug smirked. "End of the line, Reeves. Where's the girl?" Keanu's gaze was cold. "She's gone. You're not going to find her." The thug laughed. "You think you're going to stop us?" Keanu's expression didn't waver. "No, but the truth already has." The man hesitated, clearly unsure what he meant. Keanu took advantage of the moment, lunging forward. He grabbed a crowbar from the SUV's bed and swung it, disarming one of the men. Chaos erupted as Keanu fought, using the bridge's narrow space to his advantage. Meanwhile, Sarah and Maya climbed out of the car and ran toward the bridge's edge. Frank sped off in the sedan, drawing one of the SUVs after him. "Come on," Sarah urged as they neared the water. Maya hesitated, glancing back at Keanu. He was holding his own, but the men were closing in. "I can't just leave him," she cried. Sarah grabbed her shoulders. "We have to go. Keanu's buying us time." At the far end of the bridge, a sleek black car pulled up. Victor Langston stepped out, his tailored suit immaculate despite the chaos unfolding. He surveyed the scene, his expression icy as he approached Keanu, who was still standing. "You're persistent, Mr. Reeves," Victor said calmly. "But this ends here." Keanu, bruised and bleeding, straightened. "You can't stop the truth, Victor. It's already out there." Victor's smile was cold. "Perhaps, but I can still make sure you and the girl don't live to see it." He raised a gun, aiming at Keanu. Just as Victor pulled the trigger, Sarah and Maya leapt from the bridge into the river below. The gunshot rang out, echoing across the bridge. Keanu dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the bullet. Victor cursed, turning to his men. "Find them!" Keanu dragged himself to his feet, watching as Victor's men scrambled toward the bridge's edge. In the river below, Maya surfaced, gasping for air. Sarah swam beside her, pulling her toward the shore. "Keep going, Maya! We're almost there!" From above, Victor's enraged voice echoed as he shouted orders. Keanu stood on the bridge, battered but alive, watching the water. He knew they'd bought a slim chance, but it wasn't over yet. The cold water of the river shocked Maya's system as she struggled to keep her head above the current. The night air felt even colder as droplets splashed against her face. Sarah gripped her hand tightly, pulling her along through the waves. "Keep swimming, Maya," Sarah urged, her voice breaking through the sound of the rushing water. "We're almost there." The lights of Victor's men peered over the bridge's edge like searchlights, scanning for any sign of movement. Gunshots rang out above, bullets tearing into the water, but the darkness in Maya's small frame kept her hidden. After what felt like forever, Sarah finally dragged Maya onto the muddy riverbank. Both women lay there panting, drenched and exhausted. Sarah pulled Maya up by her arm. "We need to move. They'll be searching the shoreline." Maya shivered, but nodded, stumbling forward as they pushed into a line of trees. "What about Keanu? What happened to him?" Sarah's voice was steady but uncertain. "He'll find a way. He always does." Back on the bridge, Keanu stood surrounded by Victor's men. Blood dripped from his forehead where a gun had grazed him, but he remained on his feet, defiant. Victor Langston approached, his face cold and triumphant. "You've wasted your time, Reeves," Victor said, his voice eerily calm. "The girl's as good as dead, and whatever files you've sent, I'll bury those stories before they see tomorrow's headline." Keanu's lips curled into a faint smile despite his battered face. "You're too late, Victor. The whole world knows who you are now. Your empire is already falling." Victor's nostrils flared, but his expression hardened. "Take him," he ordered his men. "Lock him up. I'll decide what to do with him later." Two of Victor's henchmen grabbed Keanu by the arms and dragged him toward Victor's black car. Keanu struggled for a moment but knew resistance now was futile. For Maya and Sarah to survive, he had to buy them as much time as possible. Victor watched as they hauled Keanu into the vehicle, his phone buzzing in his pocket. He picked it up, his face darkening as his assistant's voice came through. "Sir, the files are spreading. Every news outlet is picking it up. Your offshore accounts, your embezzlement, it's all over the internet." Victor clenched his fist around the phone, his jaw tight. "Then burn everything else. My name will not be tarnished. I want the girl found now." Deep in the forest, Maya and Sarah stumbled upon an abandoned hunting cabin. The small structure was barely more than wood and nails, but it provided cover from the cold night air. Sarah broke the lock on the door with a rock, ushering Maya inside. "Stay close to the fire," Sarah said, as she sparked a small flame using an old lighter she'd found. "We need to warm up, then figure out our next move." Maya sat near the flickering light, hugging her knees. "Why is Victor still coming after us if the files are out? Doesn't that mean it's over?" Sarah sighed, pulling her drenched jacket off and laying it to dry. "Victor doesn't care. He's the kind of man who ties up loose ends, no matter what it costs." Maya looked down, her voice trembling. "What if Keanu's—" "He's not," Sarah interrupted firmly. "Keanu Reeves is tougher than anyone I know. He'll find a way back to us." The small fire crackled as silence settled between them. Sarah glanced at Maya and softened. "Your father risked everything to stop Victor, and now Keanu's doing the same. We can't give up, Maya." Maya nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I just want this to end." As dawn broke, news outlets exploded with headlines exposing Victor Langston. Television screens, newspapers, and online platforms buzzed with the scandal. "Business tycoon Victor Langston exposed in shocking embezzlement scheme. Evidence reveals years of fraud, disappearances linked to billionaire." Journalists dissected every detail from the files Sarah had uploaded. Pictures of Victor's offshore accounts, shell companies, and even hidden communications flashed across the media. Interviews with former employees who'd been silenced began surfacing, painting Victor as a ruthless criminal. The public outrage was instant. Victor's shareholders began pulling out, his allies distanced themselves, and his business empire crumbled overnight. Victor watched the chaos unfold from his penthouse office, his face dark with rage. His phone buzzed endlessly with calls from lawyers, reporters, and panicked partners. But Victor ignored it all. He stood at the window staring at the skyline, hatred burning in his eyes. One of his men entered the office nervously. "Sir, it's chaos out there. The police are issuing warrants. We need to leave the city." Victor turned slowly, his voice chilling. "Not yet. Find the girl and bring her to me. When I'm finished, no one will dare speak my name again." Inside Victor's sprawling mansion, Keanu sat in a locked room, hands bound to the chair. The dim light flickered above him as footsteps approached. The door creaked open, and Victor stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. Keanu looked up, his face bruised but defiant. "Coming to gloat, Victor?" Victor smirked, circling the room like a predator. "You've been a thorn in my side, Reeves, but you've underestimated me. You think this little media storm will take me down?" Keanu stared him down. "It already has." Victor's smile faltered for the briefest second. He leaned closer. "Not until I have the girl. I'll clean this up, just like I always do." Keanu's eyes narrowed. "You'll never find her." Victor straightened, smirking again. "Oh, but I will, and you'll be here to see it." The door swung open suddenly, and one of Victor's men stepped in. "Sir, the authorities are closing in. We have to move." Victor shot a glare at the man, then back at Keanu. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Reeves. I'll be back with the girl." As Victor stormed out, the henchman lingered for a second, glancing back at Keanu before slipping a small blade into his bound hand. Keanu blinked, startled. "Why are you helping me?" The man whispered, "Some people still have a conscience, Reeves. Get out and stop him." Before Keanu could respond, the man disappeared, leaving Keanu alone with his chance at freedom. Back at the cabin, Sarah stood by the window, watching the distant tree line. "They'll come looking for us soon," she murmured to Maya. Maya, who'd been resting on a worn-out couch, sat up. "What do we do now?" Sarah grabbed her phone, scrolling through news updates. "Victor's empire is collapsing, but he's not done yet. We need to stay one step ahead of him." Before she could say more, a noise outside the cabin made both of them freeze. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Someone's here," she whispered. Sarah grabbed a piece of firewood as a makeshift weapon, motioning for Maya to hide under the table. The door creaked as footsteps approached. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Keanu staggered inside, bruised and exhausted. "Keanu!" Maya cried, rushing to him. Keanu smiled weakly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't think I'd miss the end of this, did you?" Sarah stared at him in shock. "How did you escape?" Keanu held up the small blade. "Let's just say not all of Victor's men are loyal." His face hardened. "But we don't have much time. Victor's desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." Sarah nodded. "Then let's finish this." Keanu looked at Maya. "You've been brave through all of this, but it's time to end it. Victor's coming, and we're going to make sure he never hurts anyone again." Maya took a deep breath, nodding. "What do we need to do?" Keanu's gaze shifted to Sarah. "Call your media contacts. Tell them we have more to expose. Victor will come straight to us if he thinks we're a threat." Sarah hesitated. "It's risky. We're setting a trap." Keanu's expression was firm. "It's the only way." As night fell, the small hunting cabin stood in silence. Inside, Keanu, Sarah, and Maya prepared for Victor's arrival. Sarah had sent the message to her contacts, ensuring word would spread quickly. "They'll know where we are soon," Sarah said. Keanu stood by the window, staring out at the dark forest. "Let him come." Far off in the distance, the sound of approaching engines rumbled, growing louder by the second. Maya clutched the pendant, her eyes wide. "They're here," Keanu said, his voice steady. The headlights of Victor's convoy appeared. The convoy rolled to a stop just beyond the cabin, their headlights casting eerie beams of light through the trees. The sound of car doors slamming echoed in the silent night. Keanu crouched near the window, peering through the cracks in the shutters. "They're spreading out," he whispered to Sarah. "Victor's men are coming in from all sides." Sarah checked her phone one last time. "The media knows our location. If we can hold out a little longer, the cavalry will arrive." Maya sat trembling in the corner, clutching her father's pendant. Keanu knelt beside her. "Listen to me, Maya. You've made it this far because you're stronger than you know. Stay close to Sarah and do exactly what she says. I'll handle the rest." Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Be careful." Keanu managed a faint smile. "Always." Outside, Victor stepped out of his sleek black car, flanked by his most trusted guards. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. He held a small radio in his hand and spoke into it softly. "Surround the cabin. No one leaves alive. I want the girl." His men fanned out, their boots crunching against the fallen leaves. Flashlights pierced through the darkness as they converged on the cabin. Inside, Keanu turned to Sarah. "Take Maya through the back exit and into the woods. I'll distract them long enough for you to get away." "No!" Sarah protested. "You can't face all of them alone." Keanu's voice was calm and steady. "I won't have to. Just trust me." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "We'll meet you at the clearing." Keanu gripped her shoulder briefly. "Go." The cabin door swung open with a loud creak as Keanu stepped outside, his hands raised in mock surrender. The guards' flashlights fixed on him instantly. "Where's the girl?" one of the men barked. Keanu smirked, his voice laced with defiance. "Why don't you come and find out?" Victor emerged from the shadows, his coat billowing behind him like a villain from a nightmare. "Reeves, you just don't know when to quit, do you?" Keanu held his ground. "I quit when scum like you stop hurting innocent people. Today's that day." Victor laughed darkly. "And you think you're going to stop me? Alone?" Keanu's eyes narrowed. "I'm not alone. You're out of time, Victor." Victor's men advanced, weapons ready, but Keanu dove into action. He grabbed a discarded metal pipe from the ground and swung it with precision, knocking the gun from one guard's hand. Another man lunged at him, but Keanu sidestepped, sending him sprawling into the dirt. As chaos erupted outside the cabin, Sarah and Maya slipped through the back door. Sarah held Maya's hand tightly as they ran into the dark woods, the underbrush scratching at their legs. "Stay close to me," Sarah whispered urgently. "We just need to reach the clearing." Behind them, flashlights and shouts signaled that Victor's men were in pursuit. Maya stumbled, but Sarah caught her just in time. "You're doing great, Maya. We're almost there." The sound of gunfire crackled in the distance, and Maya froze. "What about Keanu? What if he—" Sarah squeezed her hand tightly. "He's buying us time. We can't let it be for nothing." Suddenly, a flashlight beam swept over them. "There they are!" "Run!" Sarah shouted, pulling Maya forward. Victor's men gave chase, their footsteps closing in. Just as Maya felt she couldn't run any farther, the trees opened up into a wide clearing bathed in moonlight. In the distance, they could see faint headlights. The media and authorities were arriving. "We made it!" Sarah cried, pulling Maya toward safety. Back at the cabin, Keanu was outnumbered, but still fighting with everything he had. His breath came in ragged gasps as Victor's men closed in around him. Victor watched from a distance, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. "Enough!" Victor shouted, raising his hand. His men stopped, and silence fell over the clearing. Victor stepped forward, his gun pointed at Keanu. "This is the end, Reeves." Keanu, battered and bloodied, managed a smile. "Not for me." Suddenly, the sound of sirens filled the air, accompanied by flashes of red and blue lights. Victor's face twisted in fury as police cars roared into the clearing, followed by a convoy of news vans. "What's happening?" Victor shouted. Keanu straightened, wiping blood from his mouth. "The world's watching, Victor. It's over." The police officers spilled from their cars, weapons drawn. "Drop your weapons! Hands in the air!" Victor's men hesitated, then slowly dropped their guns as officers closed in. Victor, refusing to surrender, turned his gun back toward Keanu. Before he could fire, a single shot rang out. Victor stumbled, clutching his arm where a bullet had grazed him. The officers tackled him to the ground, handcuffing him as he screamed in rage. At the edge of the clearing, Sarah and Maya emerged from the woods, their faces lit by the glow of the approaching authorities. Maya's eyes searched desperately for Keanu, and when she finally spotted him standing tall among the chaos, she broke into a run. "Keanu!" Keanu turned, his face breaking into a relieved smile as Maya threw her arms around him. "You're okay," she sobbed. Keanu hugged her tightly. "Told you I'd see you through this." Sarah joined them, smiling despite her exhaustion. "You really are impossible to kill, aren't you?" Keanu chuckled. "I try." Nearby, Victor Langston was loaded into the back of a police car, his face pale with defeat as reporters swarmed, shouting questions. The media cameras caught every second, broadcasting his downfall to the world. Days later, the dust finally began to settle. The news of Victor's arrest dominated headlines worldwide. His empire had crumbled, and those he'd wronged finally had justice. Maya sat in a sunny park alongside Sarah and Keanu, her expression lighter than it had been in weeks. "What happens now?" Maya asked quietly, fidgeting with her father's pendant. Keanu smiled warmly. "You get to live your life, Maya. No more running. No more fear." Sarah added, "We've set up a fund in your father's name. His work will help others fight for justice." Maya's eyes shone with gratitude. "I think he'd be proud." Keanu nodded. "He would." Maya looked up at him. "What about you, Keanu? What do you do now?" Keanu leaned back, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'll find another adventure. People need help out there, and I like helping." Sarah rolled her eyes playfully. "The real-life action hero strikes again." Maya laughed, her first genuine laugh in a long time. For the first time, she felt safe. As they sat together, the sun shining down on them, Maya looked at the pendant in her hand and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice calm and steady. "You're not alone anymore, kid. You never will be." Thid is a new beginning filled with hope, freedom, and the promise of a brighter future. Alright guys, we've come to the end of this video, and if you enjoyed it, do well to click on the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to check other videos on our playlist. We've got some amazing stories for you. See you in our next video.